Okay, shall we start? Okay, so hello to everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today. Our session is entitled Pedagogical Patterns in EATEL. So we will discuss about this very interesting topic. And we are a team of 4 ladies, and we have worked for this nice module. And I would like to present first my friend and colleague Davinia. She can say a few things about herself. Davinia, you can introduce yourself. I will do it in the end.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So this is Davinia Hernández-Leo, professor in the ICT department at Universitat Pompeu Fabra, where I lead a research group on educational technologies. Been working on pedagogical patterns since I completed my PhD thesis, or even during my PhD thesis many years ago. And my pleasure being here.
Wonderful. Elis, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, Maria, thank you. My full name is Elis Kakoulli Constantinou. I work as an English language instructor at the Cyprus University of Technology, and I'm also a teacher trainer for the Ministry of Education in Cyprus. And I'm very happy to be part of this wonderful team and to be presenting pedagogical patterns in EATEL to you today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Elis. And our last and beautiful Androulla.
Thank you very much, Maria. So my name is Androulla Athanasiou. I'm also an English language instructor at the Language Center of the Cyprus University of Technology. I'm also a teacher trainer, and I teach both at an undergraduate and postgraduate level. And I'm also happy to be with you today here to talk about this interesting topic.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Androulla. And I'm Maria Perifanou. I am a senior researcher at the University of Macedonia, and I'm also adjunct lecturer in University of Macedonia, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and Hellenic Open Universities. I teach Italian and courses related to computer-assisted language learning. And generally, I do training, a lot training in computer-assisted language learning and in the area of EATEL. And I'm very happy today that we will discuss about this really interesting topic, and you will be here with us to discuss all together. So let's see a little bit what we are going to do. So first of all, we will see if we have any sharing experiences. No, nothing. We had organized a preliminary, let's say, preparatory activity, but anyway, it doesn't matter. We will see, because we will work today. First, we will have this theoretical part. We will discuss about EATEL design, basic learning theories, pedagogy, and pedagogical patterns. And then in the next part, the hands-on session, that will be led by Davinia. We will experiment with PyramidApp. That is very, very interesting. We have done an exploration, the 4 of us, but we would like all of us to work on that. And let's start with the EATEL design. I will say a few things, and then after me, Androulla will continue, and then Elis, and then Davinia. And then you, all together. Okay, so next slide, please. So this was a preparatory activity. If you want, of course, you can always go back to the Moodle, have a look, and just leave a message. It is just on the discussion board. Some, you know, if you had an experience on pedagogical patterns design, or you have used it in your everyday practice, please feel free to leave a comment. It will be really useful for us to see if you have done something interesting and we can learn from this as well. Okay, thank you very much. So this is the activity. You can have a look when you will be when you can go to the Moodle and check it. It's nothing. It's not so difficult. but you will have also the time to read it and do what it is to do. Okay, with your own time. Okay, so I will be brief, I think. I will try to say things in a simple way and not to say too many details. So it is an introductory course, as we know. So I will discuss about tools and design thinking grounding in pedagogy. Mostly, I have chosen to discuss about what it is design thinking and to see a few basic things. And I have also a slide for tools, and then I will present some instructional design models among so many that there out there. Okay, Elis, wonderful. So what is design thinking? If you don't know, it is something that you probably can, let's say, imagine from design and thinking, but I found this nice definition from Harvard Edu that it says that it is a mindset and approach to learning, collaboration, and problem solving. In practice, the design process is a structured framework for identifying challenges, gathering information, generating potential solutions, refining ideas, and testing solutions. So I think that it is interesting as a definition because it entails, as we said, combines, we can see learning, collaboration, problem solving, so things that we as teachers and practitioners know very well. So it is named design thinking, but they call it also design-based learning. So you can find also this definition as this, let's say, name as well. This is in fact something, let's say, not very difficult. It's just a model for enhancing creativity, endurance, engagements, and innovation. In fact, there are different models, different things that you can play with design thinking. And this has to do with, yes, it is connected to the creativity of the teacher, of the person who is going to work with the design thinking. It enables students to work successfully, as we see here, in multidisciplinary teams. This is very good. As we said, it is a problem-based approach. It is a collaborative also. It is also a collaborative approach. And as it says, based on the literature review, learning and knowledge creation design thinking may be associated with Kolb's experiential learning theory that is also very known. So let's go to the next one. One interesting finding is this one, the design thinking that, as you see here, is used in Stanford. One of the, as I found, one of the, let's say, how can I say, strong and positive things of Stanford is that has introduced design thinking in almost all its courses. As you see here, we have 5 different let's say steps, we can say. So what I would like to show here is, one moment, can you go to the next one? Because, okay. As we see here, we have more or less 5 different steps, but it is connected basically to the ideal learning cycle that should comprise the following 4 phases. So in this design thinking process, we have phases of experience, of reflection, thinking, and acting, as we see here, that already exist in the ideal learning cycle. One very nice, let's say, implementation of the design thinking for education has been done by Ray. that has worked in small groups, and what he suggests as implementation of design thinking in education is that you can, for example, introduce a problem to the students and try to solve it. And then you can see how they work in those 6 different, let's say, phases. That was the word that I was searching for. The phases. In the first phase, we try to see and identify, for example, a problem and why there is this need for the problem, for example, to be solved, and who will benefit, for example, from this solution. Then you can design. In this second phase of design, you can review the different findings and brainstorm solutions. In the prototype phase, you can review all this idea and choose one that it is probably the best one. And in order to choose it as a prototype to implement it, then you can get some feedback from the different groups who will present also some solutions to a problem. And then you can, based on the feedback that you get, you can choose the best solution, and in the end, they can present their problem solutions. So in a way, this is just a simple implementation, as I said before, a simple implementation of how you can introduce the design thinking in just an activity, collaborative activity in classroom. Next slide, please. Also, another one that I really like this design, it is a design of an educator that he has created this. I think that it is also a very nice approach as well, where we can see how this design thinking can be implemented again in education. First, you can understand the needs of the learner, then you can highlight the gaps in class or individual students. Then you can design, let's say, that based on what you have done, the lesson sequence to engage students. This is exactly what we do when we try to design our course. So based on the needs that our students have, we try to design an interesting course with activities and all that. Then we have the planning, collaboration, sharing, and all that. And then in the end, we have the delivery of the outcome. So we can see we have all, we are in the end of our course. So this is also something really interesting, and in all this process that we have in order to design our, for example, as we said before, our course, we can also choose some tools. So there is a big variety of tools that you can select from. Here, as you see, I have just found some nice. Let's say, categorization of tools that could be used in the different types and stages of design thinking. Those steps and phases are the most commonly used, and those are applied also in different contexts, not only in education, but also in business and in many other contexts. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So you can also see and check all this. Yes, please. And then let's go to instructional design. Again, here we will see some known instructional design models. So again, we can see a process. There are different steps that you need to follow. So instructional design, as you see here, I found this definition that I think it is also very nice, is a practice of systematically designing, developing, and delivering instructional products and experiences, both digital and physical, in a consistent and reliable fashion toward an efficient, effective, appealing, engaging, and inspiring acquisition of knowledge. So let's see some of these models. In fact, there is a very big variety, as I saw from my exploration. Can you go to the next slide, please? So as you see here, again, there we can find some specific, let's say, processes. So first of all, the ADDIE model, it is the one that most of you probably know better because it is the most known. I don't know if you have also this, let's say, the same opinion as I have. ADDIE model is an instructional system design framework that many instructional designers and training developers use to develop courses. The name is an acronym for the 5 phases as defines for building, training, and performance support tools. So we have analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. And those are the phases of the models and the steps during its phase. Let's see. Okay, so if you see here, it needs, okay, let's go to the ARS model. The ARS model is another instructional design approach that focuses on the motivational aspects of learning environment. The model was created by John Keller in the 80s. There are 2 major parts to the model. The first is a set of categories representing the 4 components of motivation: arousing interest, creating relevance, developing an expectancy of success, and producing satisfaction through intrinsic and intrinsic rewards. So the second part of this model is a process that assists instructional designers in creating appropriate motivational elements for the intended learners. The model has been implemented in a wide variety of settings. Okay. Okay. And the last one, it is the Assure model. Is an instructional system design process that was modified, in fact, to be used by teachers in the regular classroom. The instructional system design process is one in which teachers and trainers can use to design and develop the most appropriate learning environment for their students. In fact, you can use this process in writing, for example, your lesson plans or in improving teaching and learning. So this one, the Assure model incorporates Robert Gagné's events of instruction in order to assure effective use of media in instruction. And as you see, the initials of this model stands for analyze learners, so their needs, state standards and objectives, select strategies, technologies, and media and materials, utilize technology, media, and materials, require learner participation, evaluate, and revise. Again, so we can see there is a process, and you just have to follow these steps, and in fact, you can adjust more or less your activities following and adapting this, implementing this model. I don't know if you have any questions about these things that I have just presented, but more or less you can see that there are different models, processes that in fact it is really, how can I say, interesting to implement and see how they work in your teaching practice. So Elis, Androulla. Now Androulla will do something really nice.
Hi again. I will continue by refreshing basically your knowledge on the basic learning theories, which inform pedagogy and pedagogical patterns to a greater extent. But before we actually, before I briefly go over these theories, I want you to tell us what you think to tell us what you think each of these descriptions here stand for, which theory do they match with. I will send you the link right now. It's a Padlet wall, and what you can do is click on the plus sign and add your post. So basically say, read the description and say whether it's humanism, behaviorism. I don't know whether you can see, you will be able to see the 5 basic theories in the Padlet. So read the description and click on the plus sign and say whether it's behaviorism, humanism, cognitivism, constructivism, or connectivism before I move on. You can see one. Nice one there. Oh, behave. What about the last two? Learners actually create their own learning based on their previous experiences. And this theory directly focuses on the idea of self-actualization. Yes, that's right. So the first description is cognitivism. The second one matches with behaviorism. The third one, connectivism. The fourth one, constructivism. And the fifth one, humanism. Okay. Can we go to the next slide, please, Elis? So basically, I will very briefly go over the 5 main theories, and then I'll briefly talk about some additional theories which inform pedagogy. As we all know, behaviorism is the idea of how a student, a learner behaves, and this is based on their interaction with the environment. Emphasis is placed on positive reinforcement. Okay, that's a popular element of behaviorism. As far as humanism is concerned, it is very closely related to constructivism. It actually directly focuses on the idea of self-actualization. Self-actualization is at the top of the hierarchy of needs, which is achieved once all the other basic needs are met. So this means that in, let's say, a classroom environment, educators can help fulfill students' emotional, physical needs so as to help them achieve their learning goals. Thirdly, another theory is cognitivism, which looks at the way people think, that is their mental processes. This is an important part in understanding how we learn. This theory understands that learners can be influenced by both internal and external elements. And basically teachers, in this case, can give students opportunities to ask questions, to fail, and think out loud. So it's not only about positive reinforcement here. Fourthly, we have constructivism, which is based on the idea that students actually create their own learning based on their previous experiences. Students take what they're being taught and add it to their previous knowledge and experiences, creating a reality that's unique to them. This theory focuses on learning as an active process, okay? And as far as social constructivism is concerned, emphasis is placed on the collaborative nature of learning and the importance of cultural and social context. We saw that in the models that Maria has just presented, collaboration is quite a vital element. Secondly, all cognitive functions in social constructivism are believed to originate in and are explained as products of social interactions. And learning is more than the assimilation of new knowledge by learners. It is the process by which learners are integrated into a knowledge community. So in this case, instructors, educators encourage errors resulting from the learner's ideas instead of minimizing or avoiding them. And one final emerging basic theory is connectivism. It's actually the newest educational learning theory. It focuses one of the, latest, newest educational learning theories. It focuses on the idea that people learn and grow when they form connections. This can be connections with each other or connections with their roles and obligations in their lives. Educators can utilize connectivism in the classrooms to help students make connections to things that excite them, helping them therefore to learn. They can use digital media to make good, positive connections to learning. They can help create connections and relationships with their students, with peer groups, okay, to motivate students. And this theory claims individuals' knowledge is distributed and resides not only in his or her brain, but also in connections with electronic and human components, which the learner has developed in the course of his or her learning. So these are the basic, let's say, learning theories. However, I would like to take you through to some additional theories. The first one is transformative theory, which focuses on the idea that learners can adjust their thinking based on new information. Overall, the theory states that our worldview is changed the more we learn, which helps us grasp new concepts and ideas. And educators can employ this learning theory by encouraging their students to learn new perspectives while questioning their assumptions, and open the floor of discourse to cement a new train of thought. Secondly, we have social learning theory, which can be a valuable tool for dealing with difficult students who like to disrupt the classroom and cause trouble. This theory focuses on the concept that learners can learn from observing others by acting or not acting on what they see exhibited by their classmates, whether that's behavior or learning new things, and so on. And there are four elements to social learning theory. These are attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. And finally, experiential learning. The experiential learning theory focuses on learning by doing. Using this theory, learners are encouraged to learn through experiences that can help them retain information and recall facts. So basically, by creating environments where students can learn and experience at the same time, teachers offer students the opportunity to immediately apply their knowledge and get real-world experiences. Elis, next slide, thank you. So basically here, I'm not sure whether you can clearly see this table. You have the opportunity to download the presentation through Moodle. So the table here is an adapted table presented by Bauer. As Bauer points out, understanding these pedagogic properties, okay, of the different theories can be useful for helping teachers to think through which technologies are most suitable for a given approach. Okay. For example, if the activity is to be completed socially rather than individually, then technologies with communication capabilities will most likely be required. Now, if students are to produce a final product, then a technology that enables creative output will often be needed. Okay. You can study this table in more detail at your own time. And we'll move on to the next slide. So how can learning theories inform learning design and teaching practice? Shang, I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing it correctly, I'm pronouncing the name correctly, argues that the central purpose of learning theories is to improve teaching, and that effective teaching requires that we determine the best theoretical perspectives for the types of learning we deal with and their implications for teaching. Harasim also takes the view that learning theories should not exist purely as high-level abstractions. Theories are integral to educational practice, and an understanding of learning theories can help educators to reflect on their practice, improve upon them, reshape and refine their work, and contribute to advancing the discipline. Theories also provide a link between educational research and practices, providing tools to organize and translate research findings into recommendations for educational practice. And finally, Bates argues that the choice of or preference for one particular theoretical approach will have major implications for the way that technology is used to support teaching. So Elis will take over from here.
Thank you, Androulla. And let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so the different learning theories that Androulla has just talked to us about, in other words, the ideas of how people acquire knowledge that were developed through the years, have led to the formulation of different pedagogical approaches and methods. And perhaps it is useful to see at this stage the differences between an approach and a method. And these differences are very well summarized in the table that you can see on this slide. Well, according to this table, an approach is the way you approach the practice of teaching and learning, whereas a method has to do mostly with the way you act. In other words, the way you actually deliver your teaching practice. A pedagogical approach refers to the angle from where you view the teaching and learning process, while a method refers to the process itself. An approach also refers to the theoretical framework in which pedagogy, let's say, is contextualized, while a method has to do mostly with the guidelines, step-by-step guidelines. And finally, approach has to be determined before the teaching method, whereas usually a method is determined by the approach. Now, based on the most popular and most prevailing learning theories nowadays, which revolve, as Androulla told us, around social constructivism, connectivism, and let's say experiential learning, these are some of the most popular pedagogical approaches or methods. We have inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, collaborative learning, task-based learning, game-based learning, and problem-based learning on our list here. A common characteristic of all these methods are their learner-centeredness and their interactive character, but also the fact that they can be really effective and successful when supported by the use of technology. So in other words, in technology-enhanced learning contexts. The next slide refers to pedagogy, concentrates basically on pedagogy and specifically on pedagogical patterns, as we will see later on. So we have talked about learning theories and certain pedagogical approaches or methods that derive from these theories, and discussion will now turn to pedagogy. So according to the literature, pedagogy is any conscious activity by one person designed to enhance learning in another. Some other definitions are the following. Pedagogy is the way teachers deliver content of the curriculum in the class, the method of teaching, both as an academic subject or theoretical concept. Pedagogy involves working together, allowing conversation, which teaches language, meaning, and values in the context of immediate issues. Now, pedagogy is very important in education, and we could claim that there is interdependence between pedagogy and education. And according to Daniela, pedagogy is the driving force behind education and all the processes involved. That is learning materials, the learning environment, technical tools, occasions, social networks, and peers. And in the center of all these processes lies the student. Now, teachers use their pedagogical knowledge in order to organize the learning process. And this pedagogical knowledge and expertise that the teachers gain helps them in the formulation of different pedagogical patterns. Now, pedagogical patterns, but before we actually start talking about pedagogical patterns, it is useful to refer to the concept of pattern in general. And pattern, in its technical sense, has been used by the architect Christopher Alexander, who says that a pattern describes a problem which occurs over and over again in our environment, and then describes the core of the solution to that problem in such a way that you can use this solution 1,000,000 times over without ever doing it the same way twice. Even though patterns in this broader sense have been used for centuries, and they're not necessarily a human creation, like for instance, the beehive pattern, which you can see on the slide here. The term pattern has been used in pedagogy. So basically, it can be claimed that patterns are designed to capture the best practice in a specific domain. Now, pedagogical patterns, learning patterns, or pedagogical design patterns, or even learning design patterns, these are all names that have been given to pedagogical patterns, as they can be found in literature, try to capture expert knowledge of the practice of teaching and learning. They tend to capture the essence of the practice in a compact form that can be easily communicated to those who need the knowledge. In other words, they aim at solving problems recurring in different contexts, educational contexts in this case. And some examples of such problems are motivating students, choosing and sequencing materials, evaluating students, and so on and so forth. Now, these two tasks, trying to capture expert knowledge of the practice of teaching and learning, and also capturing the essence of the practice in a compact form, are really, really challenging tasks, since, as we all know, in education, there are many different variables which can change the result of the repetition in each case of success. These should always be taken into account. Nevertheless, the advantages of having and using pedagogical patterns are quite many, and it is worth mentioning some of these, as these were identified by the following two researchers that you can see on this slide. So according to these two researchers, first of all, pedagogical patterns enable the creation of a collection of ideas made up with strategies and successful solutions for particular problems, properly documented with its corresponding context. They also make up a reusable knowledge basis with an easy access and inquiry. They build a catalog of suggestions, but not prescriptions, with the possibility of being improved, modified, or complemented with alternative solutions. They also ease the knowledge transmission and the learning of good practices on the part of the users. They let the view, let's say, analysis and study of complex situations, which enable their observation from multiple perspectives. They also encourage the reflection about the processes that take part in learning, contributing to the formalization, let's say, of these processes that have shown to be efficient. They also contribute to give a strategic value to the knowledge management on the part of the institutions. And they also promote the educational innovation culture and the concern about training process quality. And the next slide basically gives you some information about the Pedagogical Patterns project, the link to the website of which you can see on this slide. Now, on the website of this project, you may find information on pedagogical patterns and also see some examples of pedagogical patterns that were produced as part of the project. The project team has released a publication that you may find useful. The title of the publication is Pedagogical Patterns Advice for Educators. And I think it is worth the effort, it is worth visiting the site and getting informed about pedagogical patterns more. And now my colleague Davinia will take the floor.
Thank you, Elis. Okay, so it was very nice. What has explained so far, and now I will jump into a particular, let's say, application of this idea of patterns that, as you have seen, is a representation of pedagogical knowledge, a representation that is meant to be accessible for users of the pedagogical patterns. And who are the users? They can be teachers, as being already mentioned. This can be also educational system developers and learning technologies, and also from a professional or research-oriented perspective. So my now invitation to all of you to start thinking then how pedagogical patterns, pedagogical design patterns could be relevant to your own work, in which way this representation of pedagogical knowledge can be helpful in devising learning technologies innovations. I will present an example on how this idea of patterns have been used and applied to improve an area that is called learning design, very related to instructional design. Is an area where the main research interests around understanding how teachers design and supporting teachers in designing. So next slide. Summarize that learning design is about supporting teachers in designing the best possible conditions for their students to learn. So it's an area where tools are proposed for teachers to support the teachers' design practice. The idea is that the teachers can actually think of what would be the best activities to propose to their students, documenting them, making designs ideas explicit and shareable. And I will tell you how design patterns or pedagogical design patterns are used in this context. So next slide showed a framework by Lucila Carvalho and Peter Gutierrez that explains, try to summarize what can be designed, what can be actually designed for learning. And I like it because it's very clear and indicating that there are three main different things that can be designed. Of course, every teacher in this case, or every learning designer, we speak in general, they have their outcomes. So these are the learning outcomes, the expected learning outcomes, and what can be designed in order to achieve these outcomes are the tasks. So what is related to the epistemic perspective of a task that is being proposed to students. And then there are other two elements that can be designed, which are the physical space or the virtual space, the artifact, the tools, the resources, and so on, no? The place and the space. So this is the, let's say, the situated set. And then there is another dimension that can be designed that has to do with the social dimension or the social set that has to do whether the activity is individual or collaborative. Within collaborative, this is dyads, groups, communities. So this is about social organizational form. So these are the three things that can be designed towards learning outcomes, and the activity is emerging, no? Is emerging, every student is generating their own activity and their actual learning. So these are the things that can be designed. I will show examples of pedagogical patterns that are especially oriented towards the social set. So patterns that are for collaborative learning. So if we go to the next activity, to the next slide, this is, you can continue showing the animation. This is, okay. Another. So this is a cycle of learning design, very connected to instructional methods that were previously shown by Maria as well. So in a learning design cycle, we have the investigate phase, then conceptualization, author, implementation, and evaluation. And in this cycle, the investigation phase is very important. This is where learning designers get inspired about already existing pedagogical practices that could be relevant to their own practice and have been already proven, where there are evidence that show the potential effectiveness of that design idea. So is it in this context where pedagogical patterns can be very useful in the process for devising the best possible learning activities for students to learn, thinking about tasks, situated set, and also social set. In the next slide, then I'm concentrating saying, okay, so when investigating, the idea is looking for design ideas that can be productive for a particular pedagogical method. Now, if we focus on the example of collaborative learning, which is where I have more experience, that can be very nice pedagogical design patterns that are specifically oriented towards facilitating productive collaboration. So in the next slide, you have an schema of what are called, or I called some years ago, collaborative learning flow patterns, which is a representation of pedagogical knowledge in collaborative learning about how to structure collaboration so that the probability of reaching successful learning situations increases. So there is educational research for many years that have been showing the learning effects of the jigsaw method, particular methods of the collaborative learning approach, if you wish. And this is in the jigsaw method is where you have students organized into jigsaw group, but they are proposed to solve an ambitious problem that can be divided into different sub-problems. So each student is allocated to a particular sub-problem. They specialize in a sub-problem, then they join into expert groups where they work together with other students coming from different groups on a particular sub-problem. So this is the expert phase on the jigsaw, and then they come back to their original groups where they all bring expertise in the different sub-problems to work together in solving the more ambitious problem. So we know that this is not only facilitating engagement and participation and interaction, but this social structure is also promoting positive interdependence and individual accountability. That is the feeling of each participant that they need each other in order to succeed, and the feeling of each participant that he or she is responsible to actually contribute, otherwise the whole group will fail. Knowledge building also by collaboratively solving the activity together. And these kind of mechanisms are also very clearly triggered in other social structures. So think per share, tabs, brainstorming, simulation, and the pyramid pattern that I will further explain in the next slides. So the pyramid collaborative learning flow pattern, that is the one that all of us will experience later in the hands-on activity, is a collaborative learning structure that has been represented as a pattern that explains that this way of structuring individuals across a snowball or pyramid structure is actually achieving positive interdependence effects, is leading to the improvement of negotiation skills and knowledge construction. The idea is that individual learners start working individually, proposing a solution to a question, to a task, or proposing a question depending on the task that is proposed by the teacher. And then they join together in small groups in, let's say, first level of the pyramid. They work together, they propose a joint solution to the problem, and these groups are merging across the pyramid until the whole class is all together like proposing a solution to the problem. While doing so, everybody is having this opportunity to express themselves, to interact with others in different levels, to discuss, and so on. So this is the pyramid pattern. Of course, there are many different implementations, and you can see in the literature how pyramid and how jigsaw has been applied by multiple researchers in the collaborative learning and computer-supported collaborative learning area. So multiple ways of applying the patterns to inform learning technology innovations are available. This is one example from my own research. So this is an authoring tool for teachers that is implementing the patterns as visual templates so that teachers can get familiar with the patterns, that is with this pedagogical knowledge, and use the patterns as templates to complete, to formulate particular tasks that are organized according to these collaborative structures. So there is the possibility of concatenating patterns. So all these ideas also coming from Alexander, combining patterns, concatenating, and different ways of arranging together the patterns, and in a way that is guiding teachers in completing, in thinking all what is needed in order to be able to implement the patterns in real practice. So these are screen captures of the original tool called Collage. There is now a more like updated version that is WebCollage that can be used on the web. And so this is presenting the patterns and helping users in actually designing activities based on those patterns. So this is one example. In the next slide, there is another example. And that is the PyramidApp is a tool that is especially oriented towards the pyramid pattern, so only one pattern. The idea here is that it's proposing a particular implementation of the pyramid structure. So is one possible implementation. There can be other implementations using different mechanisms and techniques. So here we are using so the individual phase is providing a submission to a task proposed by the teacher, and then in the second, in the different levels of the pyramids, users are able to rate the submissions coming from their colleagues in the same group. They are able also to work together in proposing a better answer to a task you will experience later. So this tool is having an authoring interface where users are able to configure the task, also designing the size of the group, for example, the level in the pyramid, also timing elements, and so on. And there is also the admin part where the learners are guided through following the pyramid structure. Behind PyramidApp and in an alignment with the constraints of the pattern, that is having some particular pedagogical constraints that need to be met so that the actual productive effect happens, we have been working also on learning analytics and dashboards to be able to orchestrate the activity and so on and so forth. So there, just because we have the pattern, which is a clear learning design with very clear pedagogical intents, we were able to propose authoring, implementation, monitoring, and so on and so forth. Also applying analytics that are aligned with the learning design, etc. So for us, this has been really helpful to work with this particular pattern to carry out a different number of research lines just around the pattern. So this is a schema of how we have been developing and improving the design, the admin, and also the orchestration learning technologies like solutions that are aligned with this pattern.